Hi, I'm Doug Benedict from Radford University, and you're watching the Mid-Atlantic Esports Conference on Twitch.
All right, welcome everybody. I am your host, Raya Sylvia. Welcome to Winter Games 2022. I'm super excited to be here with you again. And the first guest that we have, or at least the first guest that I get a chance to talk to, because you might be seeing him in a different time slot, but I get to talk to Doug Benedict, the Assistant Director of Esports from Radford University. So welcome, Doug.
Hi, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
It's awesome to have you. It's really exciting because the focus of our conversations last time and this time will be the MAEC. Obviously, it's a very exciting group of competitions. And so what I'm excited about is that it's growing, right? Mm-hmm. And I get to talk to schools that have been there for a few years. And today I get to talk to you. And Radford is actually a new joiner to the MAEC. So I'm super excited to talk to you about that. But first, can you tell me a little bit about the esports program at your university?
Yeah, we're brand new, which is part of the reason why we just joined, right? I was hired in January when the university decided to make, or at least departmentalize esports. It was the largest club on our campus prior to me coming in, and then they gave me 6 months to put together a program and a facility, of which I'm sitting in kind of our storage closet right now. So we threw together a facility, 40 PCs, 1,800 square feet, console space, all that good stuff. And hopefully this storage space turns into some studio space sooner than later, but I digress. Varsity level program, right? We have 6 titles that we endorse as varsity, those being FIFA, NBA 2K, Super Smash Bros, Valorant, League of Legends, and Rocket League. Rocket League, League of Legends, Valorant, all in the MAEC here. Yeah.
That sounds great. Wow, you've done a lot in 6 months, I gotta say. They should give you a real office.
No, I do have a real office. It's just in another building and it's not super convenient, so I just hang out here.
Got it. Okay, well, tell us a little bit about the team. So you said they're varsity teams. Are there also intramural ones or sort of free to play? Because I understand that some esports programs are fairly small and maybe they only have the time and the resources to have competitive teams, while others may be a little larger and can accommodate sort of the more casual, like, anyone can join and come play. So what does it look like at your school?
Yeah, great question. So the club picks up all the titles that we don't endorse from a varsity level, right? So the university has said, like, yes, we're willing to put our name behind these titles. Radford Club Esports are for the rest of the titles. So we have probably 300 people who engage with our program in a week, maybe more. Out of those, 150 are playing on some sort of team. So titles that I can think of off the top of my head: Fortnite, we don't have a varsity, we're just not a varsity title per se. We do have multiple Fortnite teams. Same with Call of Duty, same with Overwatch. Some of our titles weren't, like, some of the traditional titles weren't super popular on our campus, which I'd love to do a study on at some point, why this is popular here and not popular there. For example, like League of Legends, that's my game that I've always played. Yeah, great. So it'll break your heart to hear what I'm about to say. I couldn't find players to save my life. We have one team, and it was like down to the wire finding these kids. Actually, I just stumbled upon 2 of them, and that's what gave us the team. So it's just really interesting. I think because we're so new too, people aren't like ready to jump in to kind of teams. But if you're on a varsity team, everything's paid for. Because it's kind of just like a culmination of everything. If you're on a club team, everything's paid for too. So we pay the league the league fees, we pay for jerseys, we pay for XYZ. If you're in the club, you do have to pay club dues. Those are more like, that is to support the club and its operation. But it's really, we're not like a split operation. I oversee the club, I oversee varsity. We're all just one big happy family sort of situation.
So no, you're absolutely right. That does break my heart to hear that you had to scrape for League of Legends people, because my next question was actually going to be, that, okay, you have a varsity League of Legends team. What about, do you have like club teams? Because like somebody who is nowhere near close to anywhere in Diamond or anything, I would be on a club team. So is there room for those folks? And it sounds like there is room, but there's no folks.
Exactly. And it does go back to being so new. We have had a few other people trickle in, and I don't think they're at that varsity level per se, but they are interested in competing. And that's, we still want to give students the opportunity to engage in competition, whether it be high level competition or casual competition, and be a part of, the general esports ecosystem here. I think we're just trying to expand and touch as many students as we can with the resources we've been given.
That's awesome. I really like that approach. I like that because esports has such wide appeal. Do you know somebody who doesn't play video games, even if it's a phone game or anything, right? I don't know anybody. So I think it's amazing when colleges have, the time and the resources to really be able to cater to everybody, whether it's at a varsity, like very high level competition level, or a lower level where it's more casual, or maybe they want to compete, but they're not good. And like me, so I'm not like making fun of those folks. So that's great to hear. What does tryouts look like for you, for your varsity teams, or is it for League of Legends? It sounds like if you play, you're on, because you need people. But what do tryouts look like?
So kind of, it really does depend on the team. It was easier for like Rocket League, right? A 3-person team, you have a lot more players interested. Tryouts are really, I guess, our stakeholder students, like our captains, or like veteran students who are on the team, and myself. Sitting down, we put students together, we mix them up, having them play against each other in different ways, and we look for a multitude of things. So I could have the best player in the world trying out for my team, but if they're not communicating, if they're toxic, if they, just generally don't bring like a positive vibe, that is one of our huge things. Like, not everybody has to be best friends, and I get that, and I'm not asking everyone to be, but you definitely need to communicate in the team game. We also take into account, schedules. Are you going to be able to commit to this? Because we're such a new program, students and the university are getting used to students committing to playing a video game, similar to how they commit to play a traditional sport. And then we obviously also take in GPA. We have GPA requirements. And if you have been on other teams, or if you've been putting in a lot of work, we take that into consideration too. We have a lot of people who have just found interest in brand new games. Valorant is probably one of our most popular games in the space. And I could tell you we could have 4 teams tomorrow if I really wanted to, because everybody thinks they're amazing, and everybody thinks that it's time to step up into a team. And again, not complaining. That's great for us. We love that. But that's, it varies, but it's generally myself and the student stakeholders sitting down and identifying what we think is most valuable. That's skill, communication, and definitely, the classes, your GPA.
That's really interesting that you guys also take into account GPA. I think probably several programs do, but it's definitely the first time that I've heard of it. So I think it's pretty cool, because then it, like you said, it's treating it just like a traditional sports program where, you can't just be somebody who doesn't show up to class and then wants to participate on this team. Does that make sense? Yeah. What kind of either coaching or sort of like training, any kind of support do you do for your students, if any? I'm thinking specifically not game related, but sort of everything around it. For example, like teaching communication skills, or even like commitment skills, because I think I can see a lot of folks sort of showing up and being like, it's just a game, I can show up tomorrow but not show up the next day. But you need to tell them, like, no, this is a team, you're letting your teammates down if you don't show up. Like, so what kind of sort of those life skills training do you provide to your students, if any?
Yeah, so I'll start kind of off topic by saying, like, going back to that GPA piece, is I have access to all of my students' grades, and I have access to all their schedules. And so that's that social contract that I essentially sign with them. It says, here's what you're here to do. But more on topic, I operate under a PSA model. It's not something super original that I came up with. I don't mean to take credit for someone else's idea, but it's, person, student, player. I'm more concerned with you as a person, your development, your health, your mental health, your spiritual health, your social health. And then, again, that social contract, you're here to do your grades, you're here to do your classwork, you're here to make sure you're a successful student. And then finally, you're my player, you're my athlete, you're my, X. Let's talk about that then. Commitment is probably the best example of something that I have put a lot of effort into teaching. I don't think I have students who aren't committed. I think I have students who like to play games and like to play on their own schedule sometimes, right? And so I think it's kind of a model. I've modeled it. I've made the promise to them that I'm going to show up for this. I'll be at your practice. I'll be at your game. I expect the same of you. And that dependability, whether that is, pressuring them to do it, it's putting them in the habit of, doing what they're going to say or being there when they say they're going to be there. We haven't really had, that many issues with people not showing up unannounced. It's just, again, that scheduling around what we're doing, making sure people show up on time, making sure people are, aware of the commitment they're making. We, in terms of coaching, life coaching, some of the teams do have coaches. We have an amazing group of people who are not in my program, academic, they're faculty who are taking a step in and want to be involved. But I exist under student recreation and wellness. So that aspect of all of this development aspect, is exactly where we focus. It's that health piece, that GPA piece. We have interns through our health education program that help us do research on, not research, but ergonomic information, making sure people are sitting the correct way, making sure they know, hey, if you're going to sit and play a game all day, maybe in the morning, go work out, maybe in the evening, take a walk, that sort of thing. So we're trying to hit it from all angles, but I would say that teaching commitment, especially right now, is probably the most important.
That's really great to hear, because even though, for you, it's sort of like a mandate, right? Because you're under the program that you're under, the recreation wellness. But at the end of the day, and we talk a lot about this at Game Jam. I don't know if you've seen any of our other programs, but we talk a lot about how at the end of the day, to be a good esports athlete, you have to be a good person. You have to take care of yourself and you have to take care of the people around you. And so putting that first, I think, is so important, because it actually sets you up for success in esports.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And I'm happy to be in the department that I'm in, because I think, not that, other programs aren't thinking this way, but I think, like you said, it mandates me to think that way. Even sometimes when it might be hard, I go right back to it. I'm like, oh, that's my department. I have to make sure, my students are staying healthy.
That's great to hear. Do you have any sort of specific either programs or any even like a work in progress for anything to sort of boost diversity within esports? Because right now esports isn't a very diverse space. So is there anything that you are already doing or would like to do in the future to sort of help in that regard?
I think right now, the biggest thing that we're doing, and then I'll get to what we're going to move towards, is we're still trying to get people to know where we're at, right? So we have this amazing space and all this resources, but we're kind of hidden right now, right? Like the windows in our space have completely tinted blinds coming down, so you can't see from the outside what's going on the inside. And so we have this blanket effort of just making sure we have people coming in. And that is reaching out to specific areas and hosting specific events or bringing people in specifically. We definitely are having targeted event planning for the next semester. So working directly with our Center for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, working specifically with our underserved community. We're outside of that, even Appalachian education, because we're right in the heart of Appalachia. We're working with local high schools to help them with computer literacy as well. I think one of the most interesting things, at least for me, someone who grew up, surrounded by technology, is when I meet a student and they are super uncomfortable around a computer. For me, I'll jump in front of one, start typing, right? but I meet a lot of these students, whether it be from an underserved community or a socioeconomic barrier from Appalachian education, who just haven't engaged with that. And I think that's not only a barrier to coming into our space, but it's a barrier to returning to our space. And so it is that targeted engagement piece that we've got plans to move into next semester. Our data right now shows that we've done pretty well with kind of the minimal effort we've put in. We're learning our way, but we've had a multitude of fraternities come in that are historically Black fraternities, and they enjoy the space. They love the space. Everyone who comes in loves the space, right? And so working with those students that have already gotten in here to help us expand into those networks as well is where we're moving to.
That's great to hear that you're already doing something, but you're also realizing like, hey, we're not exactly where we want to be, but it's really important to start. I can't remember which speaker it was, but it was actually a couple Bash events ago, but there was a speaker that actually helps esports programs with diversity. And what she said is that it's important for organizers to understand that this needs to be step number one. It can't be something that like, oh, I'm going to build an esports program and then I'm going to think about it. It has to be at the forefront, like maybe not number one, but in the top 3 sort of criteria that you're looking at every time you're making any kind of decision about your program. So I think it's great that you guys, like you said, you're new, like you've been doing it for 6 months, but you're already thinking about diversity and saying, okay, here's what we're doing and here's what we'd like to do in the future. And I also think that it's great that you talked about data. I mean, you briefly mentioned it, but it sounds like you guys are tracking it, which is actually really important because a lot of programs don't know how bad they are because they're not tracking it.
Data is like the most important thing in the space to us, not only because for many people who work in esports, this is something I've heard and they've shared with me. We may get it, right? The people who are involved with it, but the people above us sometimes just don't understand until they see the numbers, until they see that data. To your point about, the awareness, in the beginning, we had a ton of conversations about perceived ownership of spaces. Something that I was really worried about is I didn't want our core gamers to come into our space and them be the ones who set the culture and them be the ones who make it seem like they're the only ones who deserve to be in here, which goes back out to that, that outreach, that being aware, if we're not tracking it, we don't know. If we're not intentional about it, we won't fix it. So exactly.
So let's talk about the MAEC specifically and your program in the MAEC. How, what teams did you have in the competition? How did y'all do? What do you think you're going to do differently next year?
So we're competing in League of Legends, Rocket League, and Valorant. As it stands right now, there's a 5-way tie for first place in League, and that's where we're at. I think back to the beginning of the conversation, I struggle for League players, but I'm most surprised at how successful our League team has been. And I would definitely credit our faculty coach with that, Dr. Luke Liska. He has been super helpful in being able to be there when I'm not there and being able to really dive into the data in terms of scouting teams, making sure we're practicing, making sure we're trying new things. Valorant is, I kind of call them our flagship. They are playing in multiple leagues and they are always running around doing something new. I never know what's about to come out of my captain's mouth sometimes. I'm like, oh, great, new opportunity that I'm going to have to keep track of. But I love it. I would say like the biggest help the MAEC has been, the biggest impact it's had on us is the locality of everything. It's way easier for me to say, hey, guess what? To my administration, we beat the school that is, an hour away from us, rather than some of these larger orgs where you're playing a school that maybe your administration's never heard of, multiple states away. And so we really enjoy it. We really beat, I know a lot of these people who run these other programs, so it's a much more friendly vibe. I don't want to say, not that it's not competitive, right? But I can call up X director and be like, hey, we played last night. How do you think it went? I think what we do differently in the future is, I don't think we underestimated the competition, but I do think that we didn't put our complete focus on the MAEC. We we joined, we got in at last minute. We were again brand new, struggling to get everything around, and so we had jumped into other things. And I was contacted about this, and I was like, oh, what a great opportunity. And I kind of just threw some of my teams in there. I was like, you need to play this. Make sure you play. Stepping back, next semester, we're taking it very seriously, just because of the value that it is definitely added to the program in terms of being able to tell our story much easier. Like I said, local schools, playing ODU, playing Shenandoah, schools that our school knows and his neighbors too. Much easier to tell a story.
Yeah, I can imagine it's probably a lot more interesting for the students too, because it gives you a different context, like you said, because if it's a school you've never heard of, or if it's in a different state, it's sort of like, okay, yeah, that was fun. But I could have done this online, and played with some randos. So, having your opponent be like the school next door is definitely completely different. I don't think there's anything wrong with just sort of throwing your teams at the new event, by the way. It reminds me of back in high school, I competed in debate. And we went to a competition that, it has like all these different events, like there's different types of debate. And there were 2 categories for which we didn't have teams. And my coach just said, okay, I'm just going to need some folks to volunteer, because if you don't play, you don't win. And I went and I did it. And it was like the first time that I competed in that particular, type of event. But that's okay. It's all practice. It's all fun. And if you don't play, you don't win. So, even if you didn't have that much prep time, you went there and you did it, and that's what counts.
Yeah, I completely agree. No, we have been very happy that we've been here. That's what I'll say.
So tell me a little bit about yourself in terms of like, how did you get to your role as the assistant director? For folks who want to be part of the esports programs, and I think it's like my generation of folks who like never, and probably your generation of folks, well, we're probably the same generation, but anyways, the folks that didn't have esports programs when they were going through college are feeling, very sad, and they want to be part of these programs. And we have the opportunity to be that as coaches, as directors, helping out. So how does someone get in a position like yours?
Yeah, my story is very similar, I guess, to a lot of other people who came into it. This was never my plan. And 2 years ago, you could not have told me, or 3 years ago now, I guess, you could not have told me I'd be working in esports. So originally, I wanted to go to law school. My undergrad is in political science, and I was very involved in my undergrad. I didn't have an esports program, you're right, but I did everything you could possibly do as a student. I did orientation, I was in student government, did a ton of different orgs, and someone told me, you can make college a career, and I was like, no way. And so I ended up deciding to get my master's in higher education administration, and I went to Indiana University, but I got a graduate assistantship at Butler University in Indianapolis, and Butler had just started, or it was just opening their first esports space. And so for someone like me who hadn't had it, but I built my own PC and I always played games, I heard it and I was like, okay, I need to go there. I need to be involved. And so there was an all-staff meeting. I'm just this little GA, and the director's walking around, and I walk up. I'm like, hey, I have to do a practicum, or I have to do an internship. Like, is there anything that I can do for you? And he was like, yeah, sure, let's have a meeting. I didn't realize when he said meeting, he meant interview. So I showed up without my resume, and he was asking about it. It was really awkward, but I sent him everything afterwards. And he essentially just asked me to kind of use the skills I had already had. So policy writing, right down the line with political science. We had to operationalize the first space at Butler. We had to write the policy, we had to write the handbook, make sure the students operating the space knew what they were supposed to do, what are the rules, that kind of thing. So that's how I got started. And I think I got kind of lucky because that time frame was 2019, and right after 2019, the pandemic hit. And as a grad student, I was technically living on their campus. So I was the only one around to kind of, be there and help them operate. And there's a lot to say about being in the right place at the right time. There's also a lot to say about just putting yourself out there because you don't know what opportunity is going to fall in your lap next. And so because I helped them write policy, they relied on me to operate the space in their absence. IT started coming to me, facilities came to me, students came to me, and they're like, hey, can we take a PC out of the facility? And I was like, no, but I can get you in it. Like, because we, esports thrived, in my opinion, during the pandemic. It was one of the only things on Butler's campus that was able to keep going. So the day came that it was time to graduate, and I finished my master's program. Butler hired me back for a little bit as I decided what I wanted to do, and I stopped working with esports. And in that time, I got to watch all the students that I had been working with continue to thrive. I got to watch new students who traditionally didn't have space on campus find leadership opportunities, find engagement opportunities. And I was like, you know what? This is what I want. I got to do it. So I got out there, I started applying, and I found my way to Radford. I'll be honest with you, I didn't take the interview super seriously because I was unsure. I didn't know if I wanted to be here. But
you didn't learn your first lesson.
I know. I know. Well, I had my resume. But yeah, no, I had a good time. They brought me down here. We talked about what they wanted to do. I met some of the students, like I said, and I realized, like, okay, this is a place where I can leave my mark, but I can leave it better than when I showed up. And so yeah, I think a lot of people, especially in our generation, kind of have a similar story right now. We never planned to get into it, but the opportunities arise. And even still, I would say, for like new people trying to get into it, the opportunities are still arising. I know that the data said a year and a half ago there were like 350 college programs. That has definitely grown. We're going to get that new data soon, I'm sure. But I think that if it's something that you want to do, if you're in college right now, perfect opportunity too. If your college doesn't have an esports club, you don't even have an esports program, you can be that person to start it, because I promise there are gamers around you. I've even talked to other schools who are like, oh, I'm unsure if our kids are playing this game. I'm like, no, they are.
They are.
They're doing it out of your sight, so you just don't know. So that's what I would say. Like, the opportunities are kind of endless at the moment. And especially as more professional opportunities come up, the more experiential learning you do, the more internships you do, the wider the field will become to you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that last thing you said about the wider field, I think that's one of the coolest thing about esports, is that there's so many things that you can do there. And obviously there's the professional athlete aspect of it, but then there's the coaching, and then there is, graphic design, if you want to get into that, production. We have amazing production folks at Game Gym. I always thank them. I feel like they're like magical elves. I don't know how they do what they do, but there's a lot of need for that. And if that's what you're interested in, an esports program is a great place to go and do that and be like, hey, can I produce your events?
Even if you're not interested in esports, I tell everybody here, it's kind of the pinnacle of interdisciplinary study. From computer science to media creation to sports management to all these different things that esports can touch. I actually have a sports management class that's doing a large event in my facility next week. And they were just here this morning at 8 a.m. When I'm usually not here. But I got that one. So yeah, I completely agree. The field is extremely wide open.
All right. Well, we just have a couple of minutes left, Doug. So any parting words of wisdom? Is there anything, if anything pressing that you want to say to any of our listeners, or if nothing comes to mind, then what are sort of your hopes or plans for your teams for next season?
I think my hopes and plans are that we get a better schedule in place. I think, like I said, that commitment, we're growing. We've spent a ton of time growing this semester, and I think next semester is really our time to shine. Right now, we're sitting and looking at two of our teams going to playoffs in the MAEC, and we're super happy about it. First time around, first semester. So can't complain. I won't complain. But just because we're successful one time doesn't mean we're going to back off and take it slow the next semester. So I think our plans are to really look inward, keep on our schedules, strengthen that commitment, grow our program as a whole, and we'll be back in the MAEC. Simple as that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. We're so happy to have you in the MAEC, and I personally had a pleasure interviewing you today. So I hope you come back for our other events. So it's our Triple Crown events, or Bash events, as we call them collectively. But I hope I get to talk to you again, several months down the line so I can see how the program has grown, what new kind of stuff you're doing, if you've gotten more League of Legends teams, all those important aspects. So thank you so much, Doug.
Absolutely. Thank you.